Hey you guys, what's up? It's Paige from the Helen Schuler Nature Center. Welcome back to another Home Eco Challenge. Today, let's go on a tour of the Waste and Recycling Center, all right? Come on! It's the Natural Leaders Project Home Eco Challenge. All right, so here we are at the Waste Recycling Center. We are going into the main entrance, and the very first building that you see, well, the big blue one, is the Material Recovery Facility. So that's located right near the scale house, right at the entrance, and that's actually the building that sorts and organizes all of our recycling. So everything that you put into your blue cart goes into the Material Recovery Facility, and that is where we actually sort through all of the different recycling and put it into specific categories so it can be sent off to market and sold. So as we keep going through the main entrance, past the MRF, we call the Material Recovery Facility the MRF, MRF, the first thing you kind of come up to is the scale house. So anytime you go to the Waste and Recycling Center, you have to check in here. So as you pull up to the scale house, that's where your vehicle's actually weighed. So they weigh how much, you and your vehicle and all the stuff inside your vehicle weighs. And then as you go around and kind of like that truck there, they'll weigh you again. And the difference in your weights between coming and going is what they will kind of charge you for if the things that you're dropping off have an associated cost. All right, so now we're on the other side of the scale, and here is kind of all of the signs and the directions for the various things that you can visit. The first thing we'll be doing, we'll be hanging right here and heading to see the compost pile. Yes, indeed, the compost pile. So this is where you can compost, or this is where you can drop off any of your organic materials. So things like branches, leaves, grass, sod, that kind of thing. Actually, at the entrance to this place, right there, used to be Pallet Mountain. It was like a ginormous mountain of pallets that was taller than that fence, as far as I can tell, or as far as I remember. But since all of those pallets have been shredded up. But anyway, there's lots of other materials here. Here we have branches, as I said, leaves, grass, that kind of thing. What they do here is they actually turn these things using like big old machines. They turn it regularly and kind of allow that all of these materials to decompose naturally. So as these things are breaking down, this material can be used for all kinds of things. It can be used for new growth, landscaping, parks, projects like that. The thing to note though, like look at these bags, those bags will break down, that's totally fine. But as we get closer to this kind of pile that's, half decomposed already, this is like halfway done or almost done compost. As we get closer, you'll see there's lots of contamination. If we take nothing away from this video today except one thing, it would be put your waste in the right place. Try really hard because as you'll see, I'll zero in a minute here on some K-cups and some potting, some like planter pots. We are doing a pretty good job of putting our waste in the right place in the city, but I mean, throughout this video, you'll see a lot of examples of people not quite putting things as they need to. So you might think, oh, it's just one pot, it's just one K-cup. Well, these things do add up over time, and it can create a larger contamination issue. But anyway, this is the compost pile, so it's really, really cool that we can do this at this point in time. We can't yet, here at the City of Lethbridge, compost food waste and various things like that. So far, it's just mostly yard waste, but you can bring your yard waste here to the Waste and Recycling Center or to various yard waste sites around the city. So those are located kind of wherever the big green bins are, the recycling depots. And that's compost. Anyway, so moving on, I'm back in the car. Let's move to the next spot. Now I am in the car because for safety reasons. I also have permission to be here, you guys, so don't just head on down to the Waste Recycling Center and start filming stuff. I did get permission from the team, and even though it looks like I'm driving really fast, I have just sped these video clips up. Anyway, next up on our tour is the public drop-off, so join me. This is a relatively new part of the Waste and Recycling Center, and you can see it circled here on the map. This is where most people will come. This is probably where you will come if you are coming to the Waste Recycling Center to drop stuff off. It's kind of like a one-stop shop. The only exception is, of course, the compost or like any other specialty items. So the very first thing you have here on the right side is the kind of special hazardous waste items area. So this is where you go if you need to recycle some electronics, old phones, old stereos, old televisions, cords, batteries, all kinds of stuff like that. In fact, I'll insert a shot here of some of the specific things that you can drop off there. You just leave them kind of on the countertop or on the table there, and just kind of allow the professionals who know how to sort and who are allowed kind of behind the gate there to actually help you sort things. That said, try, if you have a cardboard box that you drop stuff off in, try to unload it and then go take your cardboard box to the actual cardboard recycling. Those kinds of things really do help the team out here a lot, and just keep everything tidy and organized. So moving on, over here we actually have the paint section. So if you have old paint, you don't know what to do with it, you don't need it anymore, you can bring it here. Don't just schlonk that stuff into the garbage unless it's really, really like dried out or something like that, because the paint can actually be recycled. Did you know that they can recycle paint? They basically take all the paint, they mix it all, they like squish everything, they squish the cans, paint goes everywhere, and then all the paint they mix together and they basically make these grays. You can actually buy recycled paint, which is just like an amalgamation or a mixture of all the other paints all put together. So this is where you can bring your old paint, and then also where you can bring things like these old light bulbs or canisters or various kind of solvents, glues, adhesives, things that are very, unsafe chemicals that we don't want to just be adding to our landfill. And then I just had to include this insert shot, like, look at all this stuff back there. Now, you're not allowed back there. I'm not allowed back there. That's where, the workers can actually sort things properly. Like, look at all that paint. So cool. So there's lots of cool stuff back there, all kinds of interesting treasures. But always remember, whenever you go to the landfill, don't just be picking stuff up. You have no idea what's contaminated. Actually, it's all contaminated. Just assume it's all contaminated, and leave things where they are. Don't touch stuff at the landfill. Okay, so moving on from the hazardous waste, we end up at all these bins. So this first one is for wood. It's meant for untreated, unpainted wood and no branches or anything like that. But as you can see, this is like a great example of contamination. Really try to do your best to figure out where things are supposed to go and do it properly. Here we have scrap metal. Wow, look at all that stuff. Again, I don't believe you're supposed to put bicycles in there as well. But moving on, we have drywall. This is for a lot of you who are doing some home renovations and whatnot. That's all for drywall. It's really cool that we can actually separate out these materials. If it's done properly, if they're clean materials that are not contaminated with all kinds of other stuff, you can reuse them over and over again, which is so cool. The tires have all been taken. Huzzah! Empty bin. And here we have porcelain. So we got an old toilet, got an old, sink. I ended up actually bringing an old sink here that was cracked and broken, and I tossed it in there after this shot, actually. Anyway, that's a cool story page. So now, all the rest of these big bins, these are waste bins. So if you have waste at home that you need to bring in, do so. Just try to be tidy. This is not a good thing. We don't want to see this kind of stuff at the landfill. But anyway, accidents happen. So look at this. Whoa. Now, one interesting thing that never ceases to amaze me every time I go here is to see all of the things in the bin. Now, you don't know. Maybe they're covered in Cappy. I don't know their story. I don't know their life. But I do always feel like maybe some of these things could end up at the secondhand store or could end up, given away for free or something like that. Although this is a difficult time to be doing that kind of stuff. But anyway, I just wanted to show you a couple shots. Like this could have been in the compost pile. And here we have, somebody dug up some rhubarb or whatever that is and plonked it in here. So again, the theme here, make sure that you try to put your waste in the right place. And on the way out, there are some green bins. So if you brought something in some plastic containers or cardboard containers, you can drop them off there. But we're leaving public drop-off and we're heading to construction waste. So this is where you have any old appliances that have Freon in them, which is a toxic chemical that actually degrades the ozone layer. But that's a story for another time. Anyway, let's head into construction waste. This is where I don't ever have anything to drop off here. But let's say you're redoing your roof or you have kind of old rock. I think those are kind of rock and brick piles down there. We have Pallet Mountain here. This is not a Pallet Mountain. This is like little baby hill. This is nothing compared to the one that used to be over in compost. But anyway, think about it, you guys. Every single object we buy comes into this city on a pallet. And what happens to all those pallets? Pallets are made out of wood. These are all things that were once trees. It's really it's actually a very powerful, impactful image of our consumerism. But anyway, if you're redoing your roof, you have old asphalt shingles, I believe that they shred these up, and I believe there's a use for them. I think maybe as like a road aggregate or something. Maybe I'll put up on the screen here if I'm wrong, but I believe they use some of those things all shredded up. And then we have, of course, this is where my camera ran out of footage room, so I only have pictures. But anyway, these are things like that, scrap metals and various items like that. Just all of the multitude of things that once they aren't working for us anymore, once they've kind of outlived their useful life, then they have to go somewhere, and well, they go here, much like all of these older appliances. Okay, folks, back in the car again. Now it's time for the big show. We're heading down to the landfill. So this is the place where the garbage goes. Now you can see that it's like totally surrounded by a really, really tall fence. That is to keep garbage from flying all over the place, which is really important. And so we'll head down here on this road. Now, usually you don't come down here because you just leave all of your waste in those big bins up at the public drop-off. But this large area, this is the actual kind of landfill area. Now, usually they work in smaller zones, so we're kind of driving in here. They're not just throwing and schlucking garbage all over the place. They'll work in smaller zones or cells and fill them up one at a time, very carefully. So I'm just driving up into this kind of old landing site. Once again, you guys, I have permission to be here. Don't just be joyriding around the landfill, but look at this. This is what it looks like. This is what we do with our garbage. Now, I truly believe here at the City of Lethbridge that we do a really good job of diverting waste and of managing waste responsibly. I think our landfill system is actually extraordinary. But what you're seeing is the ultimate truth of this is all the stuff we buy ends up here. All of it, almost all of it. We do, of course, recycle a certain amount of it. We compost a certain amount of it, and that's absolutely wonderful. But ultimately, our solution as a society, when we are done with stuff, is to find a hole and bury it. And I think it's really interesting to see. I mean, look at all those seagulls having a heyday. Now, this is really cool. Basically, what they have to do is add the garbage and then actually compact it. So squash it down really, really, like compact it really intensely. And that's what allows them to not only fit a lot in there, but to keep it from blowing away. They'll also add soil on top of it, but I'll talk about that a little bit at the end of this video. Anyway, here it is, folks. I definitely wanted to make sure you got a good view of the inside of the landfill. So that is the caged in area, or the fenced in area there is where they're currently adding our household waste. So everything that was in your black cart last week is probably, well, in that hole right there. It's definitely an interesting phenomenon. We are such interesting creatures. Humans, I tell you. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that amazing tour of the Waste and Recycling Center here in Lethbridge. I'm back at my desk here at the Nature Center to do a little quick activity with you guys because one thing I really want to make sure that we all understand is that that place that we were at digitally just now, the Waste and Recycling Center, is not a dump. No, ma'am. It's not a dump. It's a landfill. So I have a little activity here that's going to kind of illustrate how we engineer these landfills to actually help keep and contain all the garbage and the garbage juice, which we call leachate, contain all that stuff and keep it from actually oozing out into the environment and causing some bad big trouble. All right, so we shall begin. Dig beneath the ground and you will find water. Yes, groundwater. So there's lots of water underground and we want to make sure that we protect that water. I don't want to be drinking no garbage juice. So we have to protect this. Now, thankfully, Mama Nature's got our back, and we're actually lucky here in southern Alberta to have like a very clay-like soil, a clay-based soil. So this little foamy piece represents the clay that we find naturally in this area. So clay is non-porous, which means it's really difficult for water to get through clay, and so it acts like a natural barrier that keeps
the janky garbage juice from like
oozing into our water, like our water table. But you can't just count on one thing here. We got to make sure we have a backup plan and then a backup plan and then a backup plan. So actually on top of the clay layer of soil, we dig down, because when you build a landfill or a dump, you have to dig down so you have a hole to put all your garbage in. So on top of the clay layer in our hole, we put a tarp, like a big fancy pants tarp, not just like your regular schmo camping tarp. No, no, no. So we put this engineered tarp in the hole to actually help add an extra layer of protection between the garbage juice and the water. All right? Now, this is Lethbridge after all. Let us not get it twisted, my friends. It's a little windy here, which means that this tarp will be in Coaldale in no time. So we have to make sure that we hold it down in some way. So we use rocks. Woo! And that actually keeps everything in place. So now we have ourselves like a hole in the ground that has a natural clay layer, you know, a protective tarp, because we planned this stuff, you guys. And then on top of that, we have some rocks to keep everything in place. Now, the next thing is that if that leachate, if that garbage juice that's full of like toxic, crazy, woo, I mean, who knows what's in that leachate, man? If that just ends up sinking through all the garbage down to the bottom and sitting on that tarp, it will eat away at that tarp. So we have to make sure that we suck up some of that leachate and get rid of it. So, insert like a pipe and pump system. So basically, this straw is representative of that. As the leachate sinks to the bottom, it gets sucked up through a pump system and actually sprinkled, that leachate, that garbage juice gets sprinkled back on top of the garbage. Now what this does is it actually helps to separate some of the water out of that leachate, so the water will evaporate into the clouds, and then the kind of toxic material remains in the pile. Now, what they're effectively doing is kind of like mummifying the garbage. They're creating a dry tomb when they do this, because as the water and moisture evaporates out of the landfill, all of the things inside become really, really dry, and they just like are compacted and like stay in a dry tomb. All right, now that we have this whole setup, now it's a time to add in your garbage. So we add in our garbage. People bring in garbage from all over the city, different homes and businesses, your schools, whatever else you have. All of those things bring their waste to the landfill, and that's where it's disposed of. Now this, once again, hello, wind factor. So the entire landfill is surrounded by a fence that helps to contain all of that waste and keeps it from like flying into the neighbors' fields, which would be not good, obviously. And so at the end of every day, I believe, they actually take some soil and they plonk it on top of that garbage to keep any of those, like, you know, granola bar wrappers from flying all over the place. And so over time, then there will be another layer of garbage, and then another layer of soil, and then another layer of garbage, and so on and so forth. Capiche? So that's actually what we do with our garbage. Now, eventually, this hole is going to fill up, and there'll be no more room. No more! So, when a landfill is done, oh God. Backwards, and that probably looks really freaky, but whatever. So now you have a full landfill. What are you going to do with it? Well, actually, we end up topping them off. All right, this is some grass. In fact, a lot of the like farmers' fields and things like that around the current waste and recycling center, the current landfill, are old landfills. We build all kinds of stuff on top of old landfills, including like soccer fields and things like that. So essentially, once everything is taken care of properly, and we still have this venting system to monitor and manage any kind of methane or anything like that, these old landfills become usable land once again. Oh, isn't that sweet? All right, you guys, well, I hope you enjoyed this activity of a hand fill. Get it? It's a hand fill. Anyway, this is a waste and recycling centered activity that they came up with, which I think is really cool. All right. Okay, thanks you guys. I hope you enjoyed this super quick tour of the Waste and Recycling Center here in Lethbridge. Make sure you check out your worksheets for any kind of activities for this module, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!